Okay, big welcome everybody to Denbydale Amateur Radio Club. Delighted to see club members and visitors from various parts of the world and the UK, and delighted to see friends back again for tonight's meeting. So I'm very pleased to welcome our speaker tonight, Geoff, who is G3WZP. I hope I've got that right, Geoff. And he is going to talk to us tonight about the Royal Signals Museum and their collection and their work, and GB100 RSM and the work that the outreach work they've been doing in the location where they're based. So without further ado, I'm going to hand the microphone over to Geoff.
Right. Well, if I can remember how to do this, we'll share screen, which is that one, and are we there yet? No. You can tell I'm very good at this, can't you?
Yeah, absolutely fine, Geoff.
Yeah, I know. It's been a G3, you see. I'm not used to this modern technology. That's the problem. It hasn't got valves in. It's not much good, really, is it? Right. Okay. Good evening, everybody. I'll get right back to the beginning, slowly. Right. Okay. Really that. Right. Well, there's me in my shack with various bits of junk. I always put that one in just in case anybody realizes that I'm sort of, follically challenged. Anyway, there's a collection of a few of my Morse keys. I just acquired the one in the middle there, which is a spark trans one from about 1902. Anyway, Royal Signals Museum is in Blandford, which I live in Bournemouth, as you can see on the map there. And this is in Blandford, about 15 miles north of here. It's the headquarters of the Royal Signals. It houses a training regiment and 3 active regiments, including the one that's just been activated as a cyber regiment, and obviously heavily engaged in prevention of cyber warfare, especially at the moment. So this brings a problem to the camp, because to gain access to the camp, you've got to turn up. Adults have to turn up with some form of photo ID to get in, driving license, passport, etc. So it does tend to discourage a casual visit. You've got to be prepared. You can book ahead, of course. Children are okay, but it does prevent casual visits or make it slightly more difficult. So we tend to take the museum out and about, although we'd be pleased to see everybody in the museum. So there's the museum. And not a terribly large museum. It's about an hour. You could probably do it in about an hour and a half. Some of the military museums I've been to, there's a tank museum very near us. And after you've seen the 1700th tank, you're falling asleep. And it's a huge, great place. And it's a bit tedious after a while. So ours is a much smaller museum. It's very popular. We do get a lot of people in there. Blandford itself, as I say, just north of here, was on the original train stations from Plymouth to London. And that was one of the replica of one of the stations there. And a message from Plymouth to London could be sent in about 15 minutes. Probably a bit better than BT today, but still. So it does go back to the 1790s. And these were dotted on the hilltops all the way up to London. So Blandford Camp has been at the heart of communications for a long, long time. During the First World War, the Royal Corps of Signals didn't exist as such. It was part of the Royal Engineers Signal Troop. And this is a cable layer, horse or mule drawn, the only one we believe left in existence in the UK. And we have a video in there running of some very heavily moustached Royal Engineers throwing all these telephone lines out with on the end of these long black and white poles. So there was the alternative to the mule line there as well. And of course, dispatch riders. First World War bike. So again, Royal Engineers were carrying dispatches in all over the place, not just abroad, but in the UK as well. Then we come on to the more modern stuff. A 1930s mobile radio car, resplendent with a couple of sergeant there and a signalman driver. Not quite sure what the radio is. I took a quick snap of it the other day, but I think it's about on about 40 megs. It's a bit ancient. Suitcase radio, the A1 Mark III, weighs 15 kilos. That's an original one there, so I'm not allowed to touch it to get it working. But when we go out and about, we have a suitcase suitably weighted of sand weighing 15 kilos. And the youngsters are surprised that this is state of the art, about 5 or 6 watt transmitter, and don't quite believe that it actually works. Enigma Machine, most people know about, and we do make a thing here that we've got a replica of the Enigma Machine, but the fact that Royal Signals personnel and a lot of radio amateurs were involved in the reception of the coded signals. G3WZP was quite a famous one, Pat Hawker. So we make the point that it's all right taking Morse code and guessing the letters, but these are 5-letter groups, and if you missed a letter, then that was gone forever. So we try to make a sort of a situation how this was taken in. A rather sobering thought: the average life 6 weeks, and we have quite a few pictures of some of the mainly female operators. Coming on to again 19 set, the ubiquitous 19 set, which is my first ever radio. 2 to 8 megs, as we know, probably know, and intertank 238 meg with a little acorn valve, and audio amplifier for intercom, and there are a couple of 6v6s. The only thing wrong with it was the AM modulation with a carbon microphone. I think it's 30% downward modulation. So some of them had throat mics as well, and they were pretty dire quality. High power 18 set. This was the very thirsty on batteries. The 18 set itself, walkie-talkie at about 3 or 4 mile range, but less in town. This was a slightly higher power version, about 10, 12 watts. Field Marshal Montgomery's command vehicle, the original one, in suitable camouflage colours there. And then post-war, K9 radio vehicle, UHF, a couple of dishes there. Snowcat for the Marines and supported by the Royal Signals. Ferret, armoured car, and some more dispatch rider bikes in the museum. This is in the NATO colours, which I think were in Cyprus at the time. And very much looks like a top band transmitter, but it was the pirate radio transmitter, Loyal Voice Volster. And I think it's based on an RSGB handbook unit, and the Signals had to go out and purchase a amateur radio shortwave receiver to try and track it down, because all their stuff was on VHF at the time. We do like to make the museum user-friendly and children-friendly, so there's a lot of phones that can be used. Morse code can be sent to each other, setting up little relay, there's some more interactive stuff, setting up little relay stations there. So he's setting up a series of mirrors, little lasers to provide a sort of radio network through. And dressing up is also a favourite for the youngsters. And this is the most important part. Upstairs is you can get a snack, naffy, tea, whatever. Very, very popular with the headquarters staff. In fact, 3 weeks ago, there were 3 generals sat in the corner drinking coffee and having a sandwich, etc. So it's very cosmopolitan. who were right next door to their headquarters, so it's easy for them to walk through. I'd mentioned earlier, First World War, it was the Royal Engineers. In 1920, it was a separate corps was formed, Corps of Signals, and in recognition of their work during the First World War, they were designated the Royal Corps of Signals. So it was 100 years ago in 1920. There is a book out there which is available from the museum. RSGB carried it for a while, but Roger so far, meaning you've received information so far. Now carry on. First World War helmet on the left, my left, and then modern helmet on the right. But it's an anecdotal book. It's not just a dry history, and there's pictures and anecdotes from 1920s right way through to the current day. In fact, G3WZP, who's one of the youngsters I taught radio when we were at school. I think he's a few years younger than me. I think 5 to be precise. On the left-hand side there, he's in Whiskey Troop in Northern Ireland. He was a captain there, and he reckons that's 1984. And it's showing the state-of-the-art computer system running on tapes, hard disk based with floppy disk packs, moving data around. And on the right-hand side, that's where he is today. He was a captain then, and he left the Royal Signals as a major. After some time MOD, retrained as a science teacher. So we're still in contact. Usually he joins me on these, but he's in France at the moment, wending his way back and hoping his diesel's going to last, because there's a diesel shortage in France at the moment. I think it's some industrial action. Right, so obviously there's more into the museum, but we'd like you to come and have a look. But this 100 years after the end of the First World War, 2018, my granddaughter goes to the school there on the left in Bournemouth, and we had a 2-day event there, and persuaded Ofcom to give us GB 100 RSM, 100 years First World War, Royal Signals Museum. We had a 40 and a 20 metre dipole on top of the roof, and we had Morse code demonstrations, and hands-on activities, semaphore, codes and ciphers, and the amateur radio station. And also we had some military radios that the kids could sort of talk to themselves on. And the amateur radios was set up in the hall with a lot of other activities. And my other colleague, G3WZP, again, who I taught amateur radio to, was running a station. We had to run it all through lunchtime. We had queue, and after school, we had queues of youngsters there lined up. We had skeds set up with Ypres and Passchendaele, but the skit was right over the top. We worked a lot of Russian stations all through the Mediterranean, but nothing from Belgium, I'm afraid. But it was very, very popular. We were there for 2 days. The local radio came along and recorded bits and pieces on it. So that's where GB 100 RSM first came from. Then, of course, 2 years later, it was 100 years of the formation of the Royal Corps Signals. So we reapplied for the call sign as a permanent special event station. So this is the front of the QSL card. COVID intervened, so most of the contacts in the first year were from my shack here. So it was mainly CW, and I wish I'd chosen an easier call sign than this on CW, but I got used to it in the end. And we had quite a few. We had a lot of QSOs. No real DX, but we were more interested in having a chat and talking about the museum, etc. Now we come on. One of the problems we had at the school was in the school hall. It was acoustically noisy and electrically noisy. And G3WZP and as X Signals said, what you need is a trailer. And this was called the fish fryer, as its name suggests, and it was full of radios and line connecting equipment. And another view of it, and it was on the back of a Land Rover there, and it would just be hauled up, and the sides opened up, and set the station up straight away. So obviously these are obsolete, but the idea was formulated. And we had a chat with the Radio Communication Foundation, the RSGB Legacy Fund, who were very supportive, and they funded a trailer to be used as an amateur radio station when we're on our outreach projects. As you can see, the RSGB, RSCF there, Yaesu, Martin Lynch and Sons. Alphatronics is a local company that manufactures power supplies, switch mode, power supplies, USB power supplies, etc. Before I retired, I had a manufacturing business making transformers, and they were probably my biggest customer. So they sponsored us for the aerials, etc. So this was the trailer that we were funded by the RCF and the RSGB. And one of the main reasons they funded it, or interested in funding it, was because we were going out to the general public and a lot of young people. I do know of another radio club that applied for a trailer, but they only wanted to use it at amateur radio rallies. And it was felt that this was preaching to the converted. But the thing that swung it in our favour was the fact that we were going out to a lot of outreach activities at schools, etc. So this was during COVID, parked up on mother-in-law's drive, fitted it out. So we've got there two aerial situations there. The emergency push button, for some reason, I don't know why people don't want to be electrocuted, but we had a push button there. All the items there are individually RCD switched. Push button to disconnect. It's a 10 amp capability, so you can run a kilowatt heater in there if it does get really cold. And at the front, we've got a Moonraker telescopic mast there, fiberglass, which is normally dismounted, but it's two stainless steel clamps there to hold it up. And then we thought about what we're going to put in there. So we approached the three major manufacturers. One never replied. One said, well, we'll think about it. And Yaesu said, I'm sure we can help. So they donated 991A, the FTM 400, handy FT70. Because we did, we're right on the coast here, they donated this a marine band and an air band. We sent the air band back and had the transmitter disconnected, because we had the horrible feeling that if we're at the Bournemouth Airshow and we weren't looking around, there'll be someone will pick this up and transmit, and the red arrows would be flying into the water. So we thought perhaps it was prudent to disconnect the transmit side. And one of the problems we had, one of our outreach activities, was no power. So we reapproached the RCF and RSGB Legacy Fund, and they funded this particular item, Honda generator, 2.2 kVA. And we had the LPG conversion because we attended the Bournemouth Airshow, and my youngest son, who was a health and safety manager for the local council, said, you do know you can't have a petrol generator because there've been two or three small fires on the cliffside there. So it's diesel or LPG. So the first year we couldn't operate, even though we'd relabeled the petrol generator diesel, but it was frowned upon. So we put in for this, and we were lucky enough to receive the funds for this. So this is all included in our trailer package. So in the trailer as well, when we go out, we've got the full-size 5RV, diamond 2 meter 7/7 vertical, a band tenor vertical, matching balun. Not had too much success with that, apart from giving me some RF burns when I was keying. But it's had a good write-up, so perhaps the earthing wasn't right or whatever. But it's there. It's quite a convenient one just to hang on the top of the pole. Various selection of poles, dipole. We've got a dipole center and a 40 and 20 meter dipole. Various lines, etc. on there. 30 amp, 12 volt linear power supply. The generator. We supply it with 50 meters of semi-armored mains cable, standard mains plug to a trim plus earth, plus the telescopic aerial. And that's the inside. That was G3WZP operating there. Some of the stations I worked on there. We don't leave the radios in there because it's the trailers outside in the park outside the museum, so we tend to leave those inside. So that was just a very quick setup that morning. And there was the handover. On two people on the left there are the general manager and the sales manager of Yaesu UK. Chap in the middle of the coat on is the managing director of Alphatronics, RSGB president, and Dan Lynch and Tony Wiltshire from MLLS. And the rather short, very hairy chap there is the museum new business director, Adam Forty. And in the background was the former Jim, forgotten his name already, but he used to run the G4S, the Garrison radio station. That was just a quick look there. I'm not actually operating there. I'm just posing in front of the microphone. Notice the foam, black and red there on the edge of the sliding doors, because I've crashed in that so many times that we now have some foam there, and it should protect my rather delicate head. So it's another view of it outside the museum there, the trailer. Right, so moving swiftly along, I touched briefly, we take the museum out and about. Schools, county shows, history festivals, universities. And the idea is that we provide a hands-on experience, not just look at these exhibits, don't touch. So this is the Chalk Valley History Festival, which takes place just outside Salisbury. It's on a farm in a nice little valley in the Chalk Hills. And the farm is owned by a well-known author of military books, and it's very set up. It's reenactors. There's a lot of stuff to look at. There's even guns in the distance, firing blanks, military vehicles, and it's on for Monday to Sunday. Schools book in Monday to Wednesday, and the authors give them various talks on specialised subjects. First World War, Second World War, Napoleonic Wars, part of their history GCSEs. And then there's a lot of exhibits around. That's our tent there. Inside the tent there, so on the right-hand side, there's a lot of First World War, Second World War military stuff. Down the bottom there, there's codes and ciphers being taught. The chap putting the headphones there, we give them a couple of VHF military sets, blindfold one, and give them a radio and his colleague, and they guide them through a maze, or theoretically guide them through, but they haven't quite mastered the technique of push to talk. So there's a lot of conversation when they're talking to themselves. They're so used to a mobile phone. Push to talk is an alien concept. There's the CW table there. We've got a big 19-inch rack. So they send into with earphones and Morse keys. There's 5 or 6 pairs sending to each other across there. But one of the problems is it's pretty ancient. It's all wired up. And when we went to Taunton School, the leads and things were so long, you could pick up Taunton local radio much better than the CW. So the kids sort of tuned into that. So we're looking at something a bit better at the moment. And then after COVID, that was our first event. The Bournemouth Airshow runs for 4 days. Obviously, Bournemouth Beach there. And again, our tent there. And we had a radio maze outside and most of the equipment inside there. I'm still trying to get the sound out of my shoes. I think that was 2 years ago. But it's very, very popular. Unlike a lot of the exhibits, it's hands-on. They can pick stuff up. They can talk to each other on the radios, on the telephone, do codes and ciphers, etc. And then right opposite us on the promenade was the Modern Army, the Royal Signals Youth Engagement Team, and they were showing a virtual reality sets. So that's the Army Cyber. So we're in the middle of the military village. So there was the Royal Medical Corps, the Royal Armoured Corps, Marines, RAF, very, very popular. But ours is one of the very few hands-on where they could go there and send Morse to each other, etc., and look at some of the older equipment. This is this year's Chalk Valley. Again, there's the radio maze, some are being talked through outside. Another view, radio maze, hands-on fun. Again, on the right-hand side there, you'll see a loop there. We've made some little transmitters courtesy of Wolford Electronics. They're running about 750 milliwatts on an MOD frequency, somewhere between 4 and 5 meg. And one thing we're showing is how straightforward it is to do direction finding. So we've got 2 or 3 little transmitters, receivers, and that's the DF loop there. And we can show them actual DF in operation and show how straightforward it is to do direction finding, or did on the older sets, within limits. We've also got a little transmitter bleeping away on about 4.6 meg, and they have to go and find it. So again, it's all hands-on items. Back to this year's air show. It wasn't quite so hot this year. Normally, it's about 600 to 800,000 people come to the air show over 4 days. And I must admit, there are times when we felt most of them came through our tent. The only time that we could take a break, or a comfort break, or have something to eat, was when the red arrows were flying overhead and everybody went outside. That's how busy we were in there. That's on the Morse table there. It was like that most of the time. So that was the air show this year. And then we've also sponsored at the camp Communication Day. So there's a few guides, yours truly there. And this is outside the coal block G4RS, which is the Blandford Garrison Royal Signal Amateur Radio Society. We had the trailer running down by the museum, which is about 3/4 of a mile away, but it was electrically very noisy. So we took them up there, and they all operated GB 100 RSM, had a chat. And in the summer, I've done a library a week through the Bournemouth, Paul Christchurch area. This was Charminster Library, and we did secret codes and ciphers. You can see one of the girls there holding up a little disc there. So it's A to Z around the outside, the small disc in the middle, and rotate it obviously and set the codes. And you can't see it there, but I had all the Morse code equipment there. So I've done one a week through the summer holidays. It's half term next week. I've done one on Monday and the following Saturday, and then we're also doing Science Day in March. So again, this is low key, but we're taking bits of the museum, just selected bits of the Morse code and the codes and ciphers out to the youngsters. That's the little transceiver that we made in there. It's in a Yorkshire tea box, just to sort of simulate some of the things that we used to hide. And back to G4RS, which is the Garrison Amateur Radio Station. Now it's now up and running properly. It's right at the top of the camp, very near to where that first unit we showed you, the part of the chain of signals in the 1790s. And that's a paraset on 7 meg. That's the transmitter portion. We haven't got a paraset in our collection, so we're going to build this into a box with a perspex lid, so the youngsters or visitors can actually see the electronics. And it's got a valve in it, which makes me very comfortable because it keeps the shack warm as well. So that very quickly is a run through of the situation. The trailer's available for other amateur radio people to borrow. We want to see it out and about used. If you'd like to visit the museum, there's the information, or you can get hold of me. And really, that's it in a nutshell. Probably talk through quite quickly, but happy to talk about anything that I know about, and questions, if you would like to be like to talk, ask me, please. If not, I should rush indoors and have a cup of tea. So back to you, Nick.
Right, brilliant, lovely. Thank you very much, Geoff. That was a fantastic introduction to the Raw Signals Museum. I'm sure we've got people with questions and comments. Who wants to go first?
Well, there's nobody. The right cup of tea time.
Give them a chance, Geoff. Who would like to make a comment or ask a question of Geoff?
I'll tell you one thing before we start. I'm a fraud. I was never in the Royal Signals. All I did was 4 years in the Bournemouth School Cadet Force, where we were attached to the Royal Army Corps. But I do remember having just got my license in November '67 and going up to the Royal Signals for the day, and all the rest disappeared onto sort of assault courses and various muddy activities. And I happened to say to one of the staff sergeants, "Have you got an amateur radio station here?" "Yes, we have." And so I disappeared for the rest of the day, and I had use of a 400-watt sideband rig, chatted to the States, and bearing in mind at home, all I had was a 10-watt crystal-controlled 80-meter transmitter and an R1155. This was heaven. Then he took me over to a large room and said, "Open the door." And when I opened the door, it was full of AR-88s and associated transmitters for HF. He said, "This is what we give to our guys when they go somewhere exotic like Aden or Falklands or whatever, so they can actually get on the air." And it was like heaven to a 17-year-old. But I wasn't in the signals. When I retired 4 or 5 years ago after selling my transformer business, I thought it was about time I looked at this museum. And my XYL did make the mistake of expressing a little bit of interest. So we were up there and there was a sign saying, "Looking for volunteers." And I'm sort of like addicted to it now. Anyway, there we go. So I'm never in the military, apart from 4 years in the cadet force.
Brilliant, Geoff. Fabulous story there. Right, who's got a question to Geoff about the museum or the work that the guys are doing there? You're all gone quiet on me tonight.
Yeah. One thing
yes,
we
Roger. Hang on, Geoff. I've got Roger with his hand up. Go on, Roger.
Yeah, thanks, Geoff. That was really good. I wonder, of all the visitors you get, I wonder what aspect they're most interested in. Is it like, for instance, the history or the technology, or the youngsters? It just the fact that you got communications, because they'd be so used to it. I just wonder what aspects that they find most interesting.
Well, I think they find Morse most interesting, the youngsters. Because they can actually send it and receive it, and we got a Morse tape running in the background all the time. But we do really try hard to make it hands-on, rather than just look at rows of medals belonging to sort of Lieutenant, General Ponsonby Smythe. But we've got a lot of exhibits there. We haven't got the room to show them all. Obviously, there's stuff behind glass cabinets, but it covers a whole range. And we find that they're used to computers, they're used to mobile phones, but some of the older technology, just an ordinary military phone, where again it's press to talk, landline, and they really seem to get into it. And when we go out, one of the most popular ones is semaphore. We can't understand what they're talking about, but it certainly frightens all the birds away when we're outside, because and I haven't mastered semaphore yet because I'm looking at the wrong way around, but there we go. But no, it's surprised the youngsters really, like they're used to mobile phones, they're used to computers, but actually things they can handle and make bleepy noises and things. And because we've only got them for a short time, we can't teach them the whole Morse code. So we EISH and TMO, so that we teach them those very quickly. And my friend at Kanga Products, Phoenix, has done a little Morse tutor, and he's programmed the chip to give us 34-letter words based on EISH, TMO, so site, might, item, etc. And we can slow it down and put big spaces in there, so they can actually receive and decode some Morse while they're there quite happily, and quite an achievement.
Yeah, so I suppose it's it's something that they wouldn't come across in daily life, so it's novelty value for the Morse kind of thing. That's
right.
Like I say, hands-on is always a winner, isn't it, with kids?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll just have a cough. I'll just turn my microphone off. Excuse me. Right, there we are, back again. Okay, anything else? Anybody else? I can't have answered all your questions, surely.
Who's got a question? Who else wants to make a comment? Yes, go on, Brian. BFJ. You need to unmute, Brian. You're on mute, Brian. You're on mute.
Yeah. Okay. Right. We're there. Yeah. Okay. Well, as an ex-forces person, I served in Cyphers 59-62 alongside a couple of old single lads. I had a Land Rover with 2 radio sets in the back, ground to air, and well, the other one was messages passing along the ground for exercises with the RAF regiment. But I have no idea what these radios were. I was taught how to put it onto a frequency and how to speak into the mic, and that's as much as I knew. I wasn't a radio am. I knew nothing about radio, and that's what I did. But I've often wondered what these radios were. And I also wonder whether you showed the youngsters the difference between the radios that were sort of used maybe World War II and what they used in present day, size-wise, valve-wise, transistor-wise, difference, etc., etc. Do you show that or not?
Yeah, well, we got the exhibits cover 18. We start with a heliograph, and 1897 used in the first Afghan war, and the record for a heliograph, Morse code on the heliograph, is I think 69 miles with telescopes either end in very clear, dry air. So we often set that up, especially the Chalk Valley History Festival, so they can look at that. We've shown First World War trench radios with huge great valves, etc. in there. And then we come on to the more Second World War, the 18 sets, the 38 sets, 19 sets. Then post-war, there's some, obviously, most people know the Klansman and Bowman. And we've got the moving on to the VHF stuff. And then we've let them pick it up. So I'm in a Klansman HF set. Is on a big rucksack frame, and we let the kids put it on their back, and I say, you're running around with this with a 6-foot whip aerial. You've got all your personal kit plus your own weapon. I said, and you're rather obvious that this is you're a radio operator. So they do get a feel. We get them pick it up and carry it around. And as I say, we've got some VHF PRCs, personal radio communicators, which they use. They can use and see how they've got from 1930s up to the 1970s, how much smaller it's got, and the fact that the batteries, there's not 2 batteries in there, low tension for the heaters and high tension there, lasting for a few hours, up to the more modern rechargeable ones. So we do try and show them that, as well as when we let them loose in the museum, we give them a questionnaire, like a Trivial Pursuit thing. They've got to go and find out certain bits of information. So we do try and, again, let them pick it up, let them handle it. Some of the First World War stuff is too valuable to let them handle. They can see it and they can touch it, but not to actually carry it around. But it's as much as possible when we go out, especially to schools and the air shows. Here it is. This is the weight of it. Imagine trying to run around with it. I might have answered your question, but I might have just waffled on because I was enjoying the sound of my own voice.
Yeah, no, it's purely the size of the radios, how small they are now to what they were 20, 30 years ago, shall we say. And
absolutely.
How the technology is moved along. And, are we just showing museum pieces, or are you actually showing the technology as it's advanced.
Yeah, we're showing technology wherever possible, but we, as some of the radios that they've been used now or have been used recently are still being used. They probably transferred to the Territorial Army, etc. There's sort of a, I won't say an embargo on them, but we go up to a certain sort of the 70s and 80s, and probably not past those at the moment.
No.
But there's a lot of more modern stuff they can look at, but they can't handle. Satellite comms and some of the stuff they used in Afghanistan to track down the IEDs and to listen into the Taliban communications. So those are on show, but they're fairly modern technology, so they're on show but not able to be handled.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Brian. Anyone else with a question to Geoff?
Not so much a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Ray.
Yeah, I haven't got a question really, because the only time I went to Blandford was that when I was demobbed and went there for my demob suit.
And have you still got it?
I was a GWR railway Morse code, a telegraph clerk.
Mm-hmm.
And I had my call-up papers in 1948, and had to go to Catterick, Bournemouth lines. Well, after the after the initial training, I went to Bournemouth lines, and we was all that contingent, all that bunch that done their, what's his name, was there, and there was a corporal in front of us, and he said, "Anybody here know Morse code?" And of course I said, "Well, yes, I was a telegraph clerk on the railway." So he ushered me into the building, and it was a training officer, I think. And well, the long and short of it was that after a week of, well, I was given the combined ops, book, the train. Anyway, after a week of looking at that, I took the exam or questionnaire, whatever it was. And
Okay, here's question of the day. Welcome to question of the day, your daily trivia challenge. Each day, I'll ask you a new question. Answer the question correctly to earn points and unlock additional features. And if you would like for me to repeat a question, just say repeat. Here is your first question of the day. Since this is your first day playing, I'll give you a practice question. The topic is literature. It is worth 4 points. Which author wrote the famous opening sentence?
I don't know.
Ishmael.
This is interesting.
Tolstoy.
I don't know what's happening.
You need to turn the Alexa off.
Gabriel Garcia Marquez.
Eh?
Yeah, Alexa, stop.
Oh, is that what it is? Oh,
Yeah.
of course.
Everything's gone off.
It's up on the shelf. Anyway, yes. So, well, I was only 5 weeks into joining up, and I was made an instructor, and I stayed in Catterick for the next 2 years, and teaching the Morse code, of course. We had 19 sets in the room, but well, that's the top and bottom of it, really, and I'm still doing Morse code to this day. 92 at the moment. I don't suppose there's anybody here in the room that was in the classroom in 1948, was it?
I think you trump everybody. Ray, you for Geoff's benefit, our speaker tonight. Has Geoff signed off? Has he signed out? You still there, Geoff?
No, I'm here.
Oh
Yeah,
right.
but everything keeps freezing, so I don't know if it's my poor Wi-Fi signal out here or anyway,
it could be. Don't worry. I was just going to say, Ray G3WZP is appeared in the Denbydale Radio Club Zoom meetings during COVID, and I remember you told us, Ray, that 2 years ago you were 90, and I think you got your license, if I remember rightly, your amateur radio license in 1952.
That's right.
Yeah. And you were a CW operator on the railway originally, working for GWR, as you told us. So I remember you telling Ray. I remember you telling that tale when you came in. Yeah. So I'm sure Geoff was delighted to hear your comments about Catterick and so on.
Yeah, it wasn't the
Titanic
then. That was a bit after then, was it? One of the things we say to the kids, what does SOS mean? And we get all the save our souls, save our ships, and we've come to the conclusion it's save our sandwiches or save our sausages. And to a 7-year-old, when an adult cracks a joke like that, they can understand. They go into hysterics. But there we go. Never mind. Anyway, the other thing is, the nickname for Royal Signals personnel is Scalybacks.
Never heard that one.
And this goes back to 1914-18, where they were carrying lead acid batteries in rucksacks on their backs. Even though they had leather jerkins, the acid spilt as it was on there. And you always tell a signaller because he had big scars, acid burns down his backs. And they're still known to this day as Scalybacks. Cool. That's a bit of trivia, just in case anybody asked you at the pub quiz.
Bit scary.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Question. Yes, go on, John. John, go ahead.
More modern developments in signals and field communications. My last involvement with it was at the era when Klansman was finishing, which was about 20 years after it should have finished, but that's another story. Is there still a, shall we say, independent means of inter-unit communications without going through central networking systems, Bowman and all the complexities of that? For setting up ad hoc communications.
I'm not.
Or is that classified?
Yeah, I'm not sort of. Some of it's classified. Most of these days is satellite based, as you are aware, but there are still inter-unit communications and HF capabilities actually being brought back when people have started to realise that satellite comms are vulnerable. So HF communications, etc., is still very much alive and well. CW, not so much, but I was in a classroom up at the camp just before Christmas, waiting for the youngsters to come in. I just idly sending something to myself, and this rather large gentleman with 3 stripes and a crown walked in. He said, I thought I could hear Morse code. I said, oh, do you do Morse code? Yes. I said, where are you with? Well, can't really say, but special forces. So to my knowledge, the only people using CW these days are people like ourselves and special forces. When all else fails, CW can usually stand a good chance of getting through. But they do.
Our friends in Hamworthy.
Sorry?
Sounds like our friends in Hamworthy.
Yeah.
Yes, we operate from Pool Radio Society next door to there, and we because there's a very handy pier out into the water.
Exactly.
And they come and say, "What are you doing?" We're doing this, that, and they, oh yeah, bugger off, and they go, you know.
Yeah.
But, I just wondered.
Yes.
Not so much Morse. There are other ways of doing it. And
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's some very, very, very nice looking soldier-proof computers out there. The definition of soldier-proof is that you'll be able to stand on it, put balance your tea on it, cook things on it, and it should still work.
I thought the
so
phrase was soldier resistant, actually.
No, soldier-proof. Anyway.
Yeah, takes some doing. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, John. Anyone else with a comment or question to Geoff? Well,
in that case, I can feel a cup of tea coming on here. It's an hour since I had one.
Geoff, we'll let you go for your cup of tea. Can we show our appreciation to Geoff in the usual way for giving a contribution? Thank you, Geoff. Well done.
Okay.
Geoff, that was a fabulous talk, and I'm sure it will. We're quite a long way up here from Dorset, but when people are on their holidays and driving past that part of the world, it's probably going to inspire one or two people to make a diversion down there to go to the museum.
If you are ever thinking of coming down there, my email's in the book on qrz.com. Drop me an email. I'll make sure you're met and shown everything rather than just be a normal visitor walking around. And we also could take you up to G4RS, the Garrison Radio Club, and you can operate up there, maybe using your call sign or the GB. The GB 100 RSM, I will be reapplying in December to Ofcom, and they've let me have it for the last 3 years as a permanent special event station, so we may have that. So you'd be most welcome, and anybody that's down this end of the world, the trailer is available at no charge with all the equipment. So if you want to go out, it's being loaned out for Youth on the Air in December for Flight Refuelling Amateur Radio Society at Wimborne. The more people that can use it, the better. And if, as a radio club, if you are thinking of doing anything involving young people and the general public, the RCF and the RSGB Legacy Fund are very, very receptive to requests for money. They do have money to spend, but they really don't want to be going to a captive audience. They want, where if you're going out to general public, to young people, or things of this, scouts groups, anything like this, you can prove there, then they are receptive. If you have a project that you would need a grant towards, it's very straightforward. Got to put a good case. One requires a letter and an outline. One's got more formal questions, etc. But they are receptive, and they would like to spend money for the future of the hobby. So as a club, don't be, if you think you've got a good project and you need some money, I recommend applying to them. I've had nothing but help from the general manager downwards, the RSGB. I know a lot of criticism leveled at them, but they've been only too helpful. The same with MLS and Yaesu. I mean, if you tot up what they gave us, it's probably about $2.5–3 grand at retail value. So there's a lot of support out there for our hobby. Anyway, it's good night from him, and it's good night from Nick. Oh no, I'm off now. Nice to meet everybody. Thank you.
Last quick one, if I may.
Yes.
What's the opening hours for Blandford?
Well, your guess is as good as mine, because at the moment we rely heavily on volunteers. They're open in the week and weekends, but it does change. If you have a quick look on the website, it'll give you the latest on there.
Yeah,
at the moment,
it's sensible. Okay.
Yeah, it's open the weekends at the moment and in the week, but in the winter sometimes, when the monsoon hits Blandford any minute now, it's less hours. But we are relying on volunteers to run on a daily basis, as it is a charity. It's funded by the Royal Signals Association and the Arts Council, and obviously people coming through the door. But anyway, really pleased to see you if you're down this way.
Yeah, Geoff, we got one of our members, Richard, who's in the meeting tonight, his sister lives down in Portland, and he's going to drop you an email because he's coming down to visit next week. So
Right.
you might have a visitor
Okay.
next week.
Jolly good. I'll make sure I'm out. I mean, I'll make sure I'm here. Anyway, yes, no problem at all.
All right. Cheers, Geoff. Thank
Okay.
you very much.
Bye, everybody.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Cheers.